guys, I'm going to pretty much kind of put the answers up here and then explain each problem if we didn't get the same answer. For you to check your review, you really should do some of these problems to help prepare you for your retest tomorrow. So on the first section we have here, to show your work to receive credits, most of y'all need to, or you know from the adjustment from us going over the test that you're losing points, stop showing work, justifying your answer, proving it. So on this first one, it says find the length of Ki. This is the key word right here, finding the length. Whenever you see something asking for length, you should be using the distance formula. So in case you didn't do that, all right, make sure you remember to do that tomorrow. The distance formula will be on the yellow formula chart that will provide for you. Do not have to memorize it, but we have x2 minus x1 parentheses squared plus y2 minus y1 parentheses squared. Alright, never mind. Alright, so I'm just going to show my work. Your answer on this one was 5. Okay? If you did the distance formula, if you want to try to do that now, you can pause the video, work it out, see if you get to that. I'm going to go ahead and work it out, plugging in the x and the y's into the formula for k and i. So if I'm looking at k and i, this is an x, the first term is x, the second term is y, the first term is x, the second term is y. And that would be x2 since this was the second one we're looking at. So to find the distance of ki, in my parentheses, my difference between the x's, I would have 3 minus 0, parentheses squared, plus 6 minus 2, parentheses squared. And then I would simplify that. Order of operations, let's do the parentheses first. So we have 3 squared plus 4 squared. Then order of operations says we're going to do our exponents. 9 plus 16. Now we're going to do our addition, which is 25. And 25 is a perfect square, which was 5. That's how come you had an answer of 5. Alright, so, oops. Let's scroll down. So on this one it says find VK. Okay, find VK. Well, anytime you see letters written side by side, again, you want to use the distance formula. So again, we're going to use the distance formula. This was not a perfect square. If you got into the radical, your answer should have been the square root of 145, which was approximately 12.04. Check your work, plugging in the distance formula for VK. Our difference of our x's, the first parenthesis, we should have 3 minus a negative 3, parentheses squared, plus 6 minus a negative 2, parentheses squared. Alright, you might have made an integer rule. Use your calculator to check, like literally plug in 3 minus the negative 3. Some of y'all remember keep, change. So this is really 3 plus 3, which is 9, parentheses squared. And this is actually going to be 8, parentheses squared. Now we're going to do our exponents and simplify. This is when I got the square root of 81 plus 64, which was the square root of 145, which is not a perfect square, was approximately 12.04. Now, you will see a question where it says find the midpoint, or you need to know how to find the midpoint. That's the keyword, midpoint of EV. And if we're going to find the midpoint, let me scroll this up. To find the midpoint, again, this formula is on your yellow formula chart. You just need to find it. And it says x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. And that is us just plugging in our values for x and y for EV. That would give us 5 plus a negative 3 divided by 2, and 14 plus a negative 2 divided by 2. Well, this would simplify to 2 over 2, and this would simplify to 12 over 2, which we can simplify some more, as the midpoint would be 1, 6. That would be our coordinates, and that's what I was expecting to see that you can give. Now, I understand that your reassessment tomorrow to be very similar to the first test, so please take the time and look at that, see if you can find some problems that ask you to do these same skills. and it will not necessarily be multiple choice. So it will be open-ended. Just plug it in. All right, so you're going to have some questions asking about what you know about quadrilaterals and identifying them. So it says choose from the term box to complete each statement. We're looking for a quadrilateral with only, the key thing here is only one pair of opposite sides parallel. Well, the only time they have one pair of opposite sides parallel is with the isosceles trapezoid or just a regular trapezoid. But it says and the other pair of opposite sides are congruent. So if the other pair of opposite sides are congruent, that only happens with an isosceles, and I'm going to abbreviate trapezoid. Alright, so if you haven't had the time, I'll give you the answers, and then we'll talk about the keywords and things you need to focus on this section. If you want to pause and try it and then check, please do so. Number 5, you should have a parallelogram. Six was just a regular trapezoid. You need to know the difference between isosceles and just trapezoid. 7 was a square. You gotta know your shapes. And 8 was a rhombus. Make sure you know what makes them special. If you're not too sure if you got some of these wrong, on 5 the key word was 2 pairs of opposite sides parallel. That happens only with the parallelogram. Okay. It happens with a rectangle, but a rectangle is a parallelogram. It happens with the square and with the rhombus, but again, those are parallelogram. This is only one pair of opposite sides parallel. That's what the trapezoid. Here it says it's both a rectangle and a rhombus. That would be a square. And here, anytime I have 4 congruent sides, first thing it can be is a rhombus, and then it could be a square, or something else has to occur for it to be a square. What would that be? Absolutely right. We said 4 right angles. All right, so know your quadrilaterals, know your shapes. Now, this was a section off the test. I can't remember what number it was. I think it was like 6, might have been. So you are going to need to know how to find the endpoints of a median. Now, on the test, it will say maybe the endpoints instead of a median. Another name for median is a mid-segment. Okay, so it means the same thing. Especially when I'm talking about a trapezoid. Both of these shapes I'm hoping you recognize are a trapezoid. And a mid-segment, basically what that does is it's a segment that joins probably need to fix that. Joins the endpoints, joins the midpoints, I'm going to abbreviate, of the non-parallel side. Opposite side. Okay, so think about this. This is a trapezoid. You have one pair of opposite sides parallel. So on number 9, that would be the top and the bottom are parallel. Top and bottom on 10, again, parallel. So we are trying to find the endpoints of the mid-segment. So that would be the midpoints of the non-parallel side. And we're going to connect them. And we need to find those midpoints. So the key word here is understanding what endpoints are, what a mid-segment is, and that it joins the midpoint. So for a problem like this, you're going to have to use the midpoint formula. And this is what we're going to try to check to see that you can do on your retest tomorrow. You have to be able to pick the right formula, plug in the values for the formula. Our formula again is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So that we do for both midpoints for both sides. So on the left side, here we have an x. Our x for r is 2a, and our y for r is 2b. And then this is the origin, so I know this is going to be 0, 0. So I'm going to add my x's up. That would be 2a plus 0 divided by 2, and then 2b plus 0 divided by 2. And we're going to simplify that. And I think you know already that whenever you have anything added to 0, it remains the same. So 2a plus 0 is just going to give me 2a over 2, or divided by 2. And this is 2b divided by 2. And this can be simplified because 2 can be divided by 2. Basically, these 2's cancel out. And your final coordinate would be a comma b for just the left side. So that's the coordinate for just that left side right there. Well, you got to do the right side too. You got to check that one as well. So again, the x coordinate for s is 2c, the y coordinate for s is 2d, the x coordinate for t is 2e, and the y coordinate for t is 0. So we're going to do the midpoint formula. The midpoint formula basically says we're adding our x's, so 2c plus 2e divided by 2, and 2d plus 0 divided by 2. Now we're going to simplify. Well, there's two ways I could do this. I know 2d plus 0 is just going to be 2d, so I'm going to have 2c plus 2e divided by 2, and 2d over 2. Now, 2, I want you to notice something here. 2 can go into both. It has to go into both to be able to simplify. When I have two terms, I need to know that the denominator can go into both. Now, I could rewrite this because I know 2 is in the coefficient for both as 2 parentheses c plus e. Now, you might not have done that, but I'm just doing that so you can see that the 2's get canceled out. Okay? Because 2 can go on both 2c and 2e. It has to be able to go on both if I'm going to simplify. So my final answer here, because the 2's get canceled out, is really just c plus e. Let me move this up a little bit. And then I know I can simplify 2d divided by 2. That's just going to be d. And that's my coordinate. And that coordinate would go to the midpoint of that endpoint of the mid segment, or the median. So that goes for that one. Alright, so did that one. Try to do this one on your own. Pause the video. I'll put the answer up here. I'll walk it through. The first thing we have to do is recognize that the point W is missing. Okay? So this Z really goes to this corner here. And the coordinates for W, understand that this coordinate for Z is, this is isosceles trapezoid. They forgot to state that. Isotrap. Okay? This is the isosceles trapezoid. So they have equal distance if it's isosceles trapezoid because the non-parallel sides are congruent. So if I'm going to Z, I'm to the right, that's over B and then up C. Well, on W, that's going to be a negative B, and up C would be a positive C. So now I have those coordinates. And now we're going to do what we did before. Do the midpoint formula to find the midpoint or the endpoint, the coordinates of that midpoint on the non-parallel sides. That's why I say pause if you need to. I'm going to give you the answer. But we're talking about the left side. Okay, the left side would be a negative A, plus negative B over 2 and C over 2. So we're talking about the right side, that midpoint, you would have A plus B over 2 and C over 2. Alright, so if you did not get this, you have to use a midpoint. Let me show you which points we're referring to. Of the W, negative B is the X, C is the Y term. Of this endpoint here, which I think is missing a letter, we should have negative A is the X, and Y, 0 is the Y term. So we're going to do x1 plus x2 divided by 2. So basically, what we would have had, if we worked this out, was the negative B plus a negative A divided by 2. But 2 can't go into B or A. That's why we just simplified it as such. And then we would have had C plus 0 divided by 2, which we know anything plus 0 just remains the same. That's why we had negative B or a negative A plus a negative A over 2 and C over 2. And this cannot be simplified anymore. That's why this was our final answer. Well, same thing on the other side, the right side. We have b plus a divided by 2. And we have c plus 0 divided by 2. Simplify it. B plus a over 2, c over 2. Now notice something. I know I have up here a plus b over 2. It means the same thing. Okay? Same thing. So, as long as you have the right terms to represent the sum of the x's, you'll get credit. Alright, so that's finding the endpoints of the midsegment. Then you're going to have some questions asking you to classify the triangle. So key word here, I missed the instructions. So it's on the grid, classify the triangle by its size. The types of triangles we're going to make sure you know, or you can identify, are scalene, isosceles, I'm going to abbreviate that, and equilateral. I'll probably abbreviate that one too. Alright, so scalene, no sides congruent. Isosceles, two sides, no sides congruent. Two sides congruent. And equilateral, all sides congruent. Alright, so first thing we're going to check, always give you a point for graphing the points correctly. So A is negative 8, 5. So we're going to go to the left 8 and then up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is right. That's my A. B is 3, negative 2. So that's our B. And C is negative 1, negative 6. That's our C. And we're going to connect those points to create the triangle. Now, to classify the triangle, you have pretty much 2 steps that you need to show. First, you can use your slopes. I have to refer to slopes. I'm really talking about rise over run since you're graphing it on the grid. Then, you're going to do the distance formula. Or find the distance. So, let me break this down. Since lowercase m means slope, if I want to find the slope of AB, I can literally count the grid, the rise over run. I can start from A or I can start from B. I'm going to start from B. So I'm going to count up, and then I'm going to count to the left. When I count up 7, and then I go to the left 11. So this is 7 over negative 11. I hope you can realize that. 7 over negative 11. Alright, so to find that distance, I'm going to take those same points. I'm going to put it into the distance formula. I'm going to use my parentheses, 7 squared plus a negative 11 squared. 7 squared plus the negative 11 squared. Anything that I square that's the negative will always become positive because the negative times the negative is positive. So basically we have 49 and 121. And we're going to add that together. So AB is the square root of 170. So we know the side of AB is square root of 170. So then I'm going to find the side of BC. Now, I know you want to maybe complain and say this is too much work. This is what it takes to show it, to do it. So if you want the points, you're going to do the steps. So find the slope of BC, find the length of BC, then find the slope of AC, and find the length of AC using your distance with those slopes. If you want to pause the video, you can do so. Check your work. I'm going to come back with the answer and with the steps. Alright, so BC, the rise over run was 4 over 4, which is 4 squared plus 4 squared, 16 and 16 is 32. So BC was square root of 32. AC was down or up 11 and to the left 7, which was a negative 7, so 11 over 7. And then right there, I should have something. Basically, if I do my distance formula using the same points, maybe I just, same distance, same numbers, and just change them, I'm going to have the same value, the same length. So I should have square root of 170, and because we have two sides congruent, then I've proven that this is isosceles, because I'm showing that AB is equal to AC. Okay. Alright, so on number 2, you need to try to do number 2. First thing you need to do is plot the points. I'm going to scroll back up, and we need to find the slopes and the distance. So go ahead and pause the video, try that. I'm going to pause as well, get it on here, and then show the answer. Alright guys, check your answer. So I did the slope of BC, rise over run. I went from C to B, so that was up 10 to the left one. So this actually was a -1, but when you do a negative square, it becomes positive. 10 squared is 100, 100 plus 1 is 101. So, and then we did AB, rise over run, up 8 to the right 7. Then that had the length of square root of 113, and then AC, square root of 65. And then if I look at my values that I have for each, BC, AC, AB, and AC, none of them are the same. So since none of the sides are equal, this is scaling. Alright, so on this last part, not last part, but the next part, next type of questions you have to do are dealing with just determining what type of parallelogram it is. Is it a rectangle? Is it a rhombus? Is it a square? And using the slopes to justify your answer. But here we're going to algebraic slopes and the length. So first thing is first, always graph the points. I think this one comes off the grid, so we're just going to have to add some lines here. So we have 8, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we have 15, 0. This is 10. I'm going to have to do 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Just kind of extend it out. So we have 15, 0. It's a little off, but. And then we have 8, I believe, 15, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 8, 5. So basically we have A, B, C, and D. A, B, C, and D. So connect that. And there's a little typo on the version because they want us to look at the slope of AC. So we need to draw that diagonal and the slope of BD. And then on the length of AC, and this should be the length of BD. There should be a D here. So I can do the slope of AC just counting my rise over run. My slope of AC, count rise over run, will be 5 over 7. Slope of BD, count the rise over run, up 5, now to the left 7. So this was a negative 5 over 7. So they're just only opposites of each other. And then I'm going to do the length of AC. Well, I'm going to use those same numbers and do 5 squared plus 7 squared. Or my parentheses, sorry. That would give me 25 plus 49. When we add those together, we get the square root of 74. Well, again, I have negative 5 and 7. Well, again, it's going to give me square root of 74. So, what quadrilateral has the diagonals that are congruent? Diagonals that are congruent. Well, the diagonals that are congruent would be a rectangle. And it could also be a square, but a square, the diagonals are opposite reciprocals. They're also perpendicular, and these diagonals are not. So the answer here was a rectangle. Alright, so on this next one, we are going to graph it. You get points for graphing. This is a good one because they're not always going to be nice and neat from what you know. So you're going to have to make sure you get your points on correctly and look at the slope. So to classify it, graph your points. And again, you're going to use the slope. And you're going to do your distance. Alright, so get your points on here. I think oh no, it's working. Alright, so we have 3, 0. That's my L. 7, negative 3. That's my M. N is -7, -9. That's my N. And P is -4, -3. So you're going to connect the points. And what you like to do is just say, oh, it looks like a trapezoid, so that's what it is. But you're going to have to prove it. You have to justify it. So you're going to have to use your slopes of each side and then prove what has to occur for it to be a trapezoid. And that would mean only one pair of opposite sides parallel. So I'm going to do the slope of PL, do my rise over run, and that slope was 3/7. And I'm going to do my slope of LM. Again, and look at my rise over run. This slope is decreasing, it's going down. So this was a -3/4. Then I'm going to look at my slope of NM. It's very long. It's 6/14. Well, 6/14 can be reduced to 3/7. Uh-oh, I noticed something. Hopefully you do too. These two are the same. So if they have the same slope, then that proves something. What does that prove? Exactly if you said parallel. So automatically I know, right there, we got one pair of opposite sides parallel. But then I'm going to just check to make sure I don't have the non-parallel sides congruent. So then I'm going to look at my slope to P to N. Slope to P to N is 6/3. It is not the -3/4 or -4/3. So since I only have one pair of opposite sides parallel, this would just be a trapezoid. And you would have to say only one pair of opposite sides parallel. And that would be PL parallel to NM. Okay? So only one pair. Alright, this was on your test as well. I think you may be missing a graph, but you have to do a couple things. Let's just recap. Graph the points. Remember, it's a parallelogram. Order is important. So we're going to have a -3, -2. That's our A. 1, 0 is our B. C is 2, -2. And we're not going to connect the 3 because it's not a triangle, it's a parallelogram. We're going to connect in order A to B to C. And I'm looking for a pattern to figure out where D is. I'm hoping you see it should be in the third quadrant. It should be somewhere down here, somewhere over here. And the way I do that to come up with that pattern is I look opposite sides. AD would be opposite BC. And if I look at B to C, that is down 2 to the right 1. I'm going to follow that pattern, down 2 to the right 1. And that will let me know where D is going to be. And so then I'm going to connect A, B, C, D. And the key word to this is this. What is the y-intercept of CD? So my green line is my line, or actually I'll make it red here. My line from C to D, we're trying to find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is where the point, it crosses the y-axis. And up here is my y-axis. I'm looking for that point right there. And I see it crosses the y-axis at a -3. And that is my answer. Then we have, I think you might be missing the graph on this. It says, which of the following is the best names for the figure HIJK? So we're going to graph the points. You get a point for putting the points on the right spot of connecting them. So we have a -2, -1, that's my H. -4, +2, that's my I. -1, +4 is my J. And 1, 1 is my K. So we're going to H, I, J, K. And we're going to connect them. Now, to determine this, show your work to justify your reasoning. Again, you have to first use slopes. And then second, use the distance formula. use distance. Alright, so guys, and it says some of y'all did this on the test, which is fine. You went ahead, that was 2. That is 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. This right here would be 2, and down is negative 3. Here we would have 2, and to the left, negative 3, and then again, negative 2, up 3. And when I look, I can see I'm using the same ratio every time. 2 and 3, whether it's negative, and I'm squaring that. So every time I have a 2 squared, and I have a 3 squared, or a negative 3 squared, but it doesn't matter because it becomes positive. Negative times a negative is positive. This gives me 4 plus 9, which equals the square root of 13. That means each side is the square root of 13. And if they're all congruent, then what we have here is, and I think the typo here, oh, so then I look at my slopes, oh sorry, it's a rectangle or a rhombus. It has to be a rhombus if all sides are congruent. But then it also shows me that if I have here opposite reciprocals, and it's going to be a rhombus. So let me tell you what happened. So if I look at the slope from I to J, I to J had the slope up to the right 3. And then if I look at the slope from J to K had the slope negative 3 over 2. These two slopes are opposite reciprocals, so they're perpendicular, which means they make a right angle. That's how I'm proving, even though it doesn't look it, that's how I'm proving. Wait a minute. The slope is down 3 to the right, yeah. So that proves that they're perpendicular. Alright, then our last one, oops, I went the wrong way. Our last little sets of problems. The letters need to be changed on here. This was A, B, and then AB is parallel to CD. This should be C and D. So basically we know these two are parallel. How do we prove without using the slope formula? Hint, diagonals bisect each other. What you need to remember is diagonals bisect each other. So how can you use to prove that it bisects? The answer is always going to be use the midpoint with the diagonals. Okay? If the diagonals have the same midpoint, then they bisect. And they bisect. So basically with words that go together to pick the answer choice, is making sure you know bisect and midpoint go together, and we're looking at the diagonals. Make sure you're reading it. Diagonals here are AC and BD. And you had that one on the test. I would go back to look at that one. And then here, again, it says M is the midpoint. So first thing we would have to use is the midpoint formula. And then we want to complete or verify that it is perpendicular, because here it says find, use what to show that it's perpendicular. That would be the slopes. And then we would use the perpendicular bisector theorem to show equidistance. So you have to know those 3 steps. Now this is also, let me see if I got it copied. Maybe I don't. I'll put it up here. You have a blueprint that was attached to your post. So just give me a second. On Edmodo. When you get logged in, let me get logged in and I'll show you how to find it. Okay, so when you're on Edmodo, my last post here, and I'm a little bit behind on the explanation, but you have a review that you can click on. This is what I've just kind of walked through and went through, and then you had a reassessment blueprint. And it tells you when you have your reassessment, tells you there will be 7 questions, 3 multiple choice, 4 free response. You can do a note card. This is an example of what can be on your note card. You can only have quadrilaterals on your note card. So just make sure you know these 6 types of quadrilaterals. Here's how it's broken out. Make sure you can find the coordinates of points using variables similar to your question and your test. So it breaks down to what problems on your quiz and your test you need to look at. Make sure you know the types of triangles. Name for a given vertices using the distance, midpoint, slope formulas. Also be able to find the y-intercept, okay, on the quiz and on the test. You got to verify 2 pairs of a figure are parallel with the same slope. You basically proving the figure is parallel. Midpoint or slope formulas to prove the properties of parallelogram. Distance formula for measure, midpoint for midpoint, slope to measure slope, for bisector theorem. So take the time to study this, look at the problems that they tell you to refer to, and if you can do the review questions, then I feel confident, and show the work, you must show the work, then you should feel confident you can do better on your retest. Remember, we're taking the higher of the 2 grades. You can get up to 100. Happy studying, guys. Thank you.